Hello there and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevicius. Today's guest is Dr. Alain Trouche, my longtime friend and colleague from the studies at UNL at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He is now living in Taipei in Taiwan, and he's been student of George Ritchie, and originally from France. He grew up in Michigan, United States, so he has both cultures in his personality. And in this conversation you will find out so much about his ways of practice, his experience with the French organs, his experience with the great masters at UNL and Indiana University, and other things that are so fascinating. If you are just starting out on the organ, he will provide some insights so that your practice will be efficient and enjoyable. So let's go to the show and let's find this conversation inspiring. Welcome, Alain, to this interview. I'm very delighted to be able to talk to you after 10 years of break. We've been colleagues and students at UNL at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and you've been a doctoral student of Dr. George Ritchie, and he was a fantastic professor right over there. So we will talk about your experience at UNL and others. But for starters, let me ask you this. How did you first fall in love with the organ? I usually ask our guests at the beginning of the conversation. It's very interesting, you see, because usually we have those early childhood experiences when somebody wise introduced us to the pipe organ. Maybe we went to the concert. Do you remember such an occasion in your life?
Yes and no. It's sort of vague for me. Maybe my memory is not so good, but I actually started music really young, like most musicians, I guess. And I started playing the trumpet out of all the instruments, which was actually unlikely because I was born with malformation of the lip. It's called hair lip. Mm-hmm. So they thought, trumpet might be really hard because my muscles were very stiff there. But I managed to do it. I was like 9 years old or something, and joined the conservatory in the south of France, where I partially grew up. But meanwhile, my mom is a church organist, and so I always heard the organ. And I would be on her side, during Mass on Sundays. But at that age, I didn't think, I want to study organ. That was just not on my radar. And we moved to Michigan when I was 13. And I was also interested in piano, so I had some lessons on piano for a year or two. And for some reason, I decided I wanted to learn organ because my mom was studying with Stephen Egler at Central Michigan University. And somehow I said I was interested. I don't remember why particularly, but anyways, I started studying with him and I just fell in love with it ever since. I just got really into it.
Fantastic.
But she would take me to organ concerts when I was very young, like 8, 9, 10. And it's not like that made me want to do it. Maybe it just entered my subconsciousness, and then when I was ready, then it surfaced.
Right. Do you remember the first organ which you saw from up close? The first instrument.
Yes, up close it was a very small church organ, because where we lived was a village near Strasbourg, and the organ was very small, maybe like 3 or 5 stops, who knows. And so that's my first up close exposure. And then I do remember in the south, because we moved from Strasbourg to the south of France near Nice, and I remember she took me to Saint-Maximin, which I didn't really understand the significance of that organ at that age. But I just thought, oh, what a big sound. It was quite something. I think it was André Isoire playing, but I'm not positive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at that age, how old were you when you saw Saint-Maximin?
Oh gosh, I think
About.
either 9 or 10.
Wow. I imagine hundreds or even thousands of organists would envy you, right? At that age, at that little age, you were able to see one of the most spectacular organs in France, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sound. I just remember what a sound it is.
Oh,
yeah.
And this church, the small village organ you just described with a few stops, was it an old church, a historical church? Do you remember?
It was a small church, and in Alsace, what happened a lot of the time is the church would be shared with Protestants, between Catholics and Protestants. And so that was one of them. It was shared. And I don't know how old the church was, but probably, I don't know if it was, during the war, a lot of buildings were like destroyed and all that. So I don't know if it was rebuilt to look old or just rebuilt, or if it was just old. I'm not sure, because I was so young. I was like 6 or 7, so I don't have a very clear picture in my mind. But I do remember sitting or standing next to my mom, and she would play the small pipe organ. Yeah.
Fantastic. Usually people when they see this first instrument in the church like this, later in years they can even recollect the smell of the church, so the smell of the environment, even the lighting itself. Do you remember what time of the day it was?
Yes, it was Sunday morning.
You see, you remember that It was Sunday morning. It's an image in your mind that really went straight to your subconsciousness, probably, right? And then later made some changes to your character and personality, and even your career, right?
Yeah, well, yes.
Apparently, right. Fantastic. So from that point, you were studying later in Michigan some piano, right? What happened next? How did you formally thought of studying the organ? Transferring from piano to the organ.
I think because my mom, she was studying organ. When we moved to the south of France, she actually enrolled in the adult class of the Conservatory of Nice. It was taught by Jean Wallet, who was almost blind, actually. He went to the school for the blind in Paris. And then she wanted to continue that in Michigan. So we found Dr. Egler, Stephen Egler, who teaches at Central Michigan University. He was a student of Robert Glasgow at U of. And I think when she got involved with that, somehow that piqued my interest. I don't remember exactly how. I'm sorry, my memory is not too good. But I think it just really sparked my interest. And my father bought an electronic organ for my mom to practice on at home. And I'm like, ooh, that looks fun.
Right.
And that may be partially why I wanted to do it, just so I could play that toy. And so then I started to take lessons with Dr. Egler, and I just got hooked.
Hooked. Good description. Hooked. Good. And Alain, usually people when they remember their first organ, right? You just described this experience is quite unforgettable. But also the first music, the first piece that you played. Do you remember the first organ music that you performed or played on that electronic organ, for example?
I remember practicing the G minor Little Fugue of Bach.
Right.
That was my first Bach piece that Dr. Egler gave me. Well, that was after, basics, of course. Not the first thing I did. And yeah, I remember practicing that on there. And also, my first recital was after 3 years. So I started at either 13 or 14 years old. And then after 3 years, I gave my first recital as a senior in high school. So I played that fugue, that little G minor fugue. And then the Toccata of Dubois, Pop, 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 pop. And then Sowerby, Land of Rest, the Prelude on Land of Rest. And then Jean Anglais, he has those small pieces, the 9 pieces, and the Song of Peace, I think it's and Song of Wars, I forgot, and I would play that.
Fantastic. These are not the easiest pieces, right?
No, I guess not.
Right. So you were hardworking right from the beginning, right?
Yeah, actually, I was. I would spend quite a bit of time on there, yeah.
And of course, piano background will help too, right?
A little bit, yeah. I always had this complex about my background. I don't have a very strong piano background. Like, some people, they start at 5 or 6 years old piano, and I didn't. I started with the trumpet, as I said earlier. And I always played around on the piano, playing from ear. I would hear things, and I would just try and see what I can duplicate it on the piano. And but I only had a year or two of formal piano lessons, so not a very strong piano background. So my technique, I always felt, was just lacking. But I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm playing on organ, and it's a different technique, and that's fine. And but actually, I think a piano background helps a lot.
But on the other hand, if you didn't have that extensive piano background, you could skip some frustrations, right? And you didn't need to adapt. You didn't need to adapt.
That's true. I didn't need to adapt. That's true. I never had a pianist way of approaching the organ. I was always organ way of approaching the organ, and Dr. Egler taught me from the very beginning minimal movement.
Right.
Always minimal movement.
Right.
And not lifting of the wrist and all that. I never did that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how much time per day did you practice over there?
When I was in high school?
Yeah.
Probably 2 to 3 hours.
Oh, you could afford that much. Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Many things can be achieved over 2-3 hours. Many things, right? It's very adequate time.
Well, and back then I wasn't as, how do you say that? When you're young, your approach to practice is probably not the smartest. And after years and after studying with different people, then I learned how to practice a bit smarter than when I was young, of course.
And who was your life-changing expert or mentor who taught you the right efficient practice techniques?
Well, Dr. Egler would try to teach me the efficient way. I just didn't want to listen, probably, or whatever, or was just stubborn. But Dr. Melon Kaiser, I went there for my master's in Indiana University, and she taught me some valuable way of practicing. And then Dr. Ritchie furthered that along,
So all these great mentors, of course, later have these formative impacts for our careers, right? Later on,
yes.
And we remember those approaches to practices even decades later, right, Alain?
Yes. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense now that I think about it.
I suspect that today you are practicing a little bit different, right? Because you are an expert on this, so you don't need to let's say take a piece apart and study voice by voice, right? because you are a great sight
Um,
reader. But unless
I've
sometimes you can.
I've always been a very quick sight reader, actually,
Hmm.
and that's to a detriment. That's a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing because I can read quickly if I need to, like accompanying or whatever. But it's a curse because I would never take the time to be very detailed
Hmm.
and write the necessary fingering. I would just plow through a piece, and now I just take a more methodical approach to practicing, where I really take it apart and be very careful about fingering and be very detailed in things.
Let me say something to your credit, Alain. I think you are underestimating yourself, because when we were studying together at UNL, I didn't notice that at all. You practice those big pieces, the difficult repertoire, right? And it was just perfect, yeah. And your DMA recitals went just fantastically, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your experience at UNL. All right. What first impressed you at UNL, and why did you choose that university over many others?
I first heard of George Ritchie through Stephen Egler, who Stephen Egler in the when I was in high school, I guess it would be 95, 96.
Hmm.
He went on a sabbatical with George Ritchie, so there was that first connection there. And when I was applying for master's school, I actually applied at UNL and Indiana University. And I got accepted at IU. I got accepted at both places, but I wanted to go to IU, so I did.
Hmm.
But then after the masters, then I'm like, okay, I think now I'm ready to go to UNL.
Hmm. Hmm.
To study with George Ritchie. I knew his. He had started back then. He had started his Bach recording. He already had the first one. I don't know if the second one. Well, yeah, the second one, of course, had come out by then, or even the third. I'm not sure. Volume. So I knew of those, and of course, I would listen to them to get inspiration. And so I applied, and I got in the same year as you did.
Right, right.
And what impressed me was both of them, Quentin Faulkner and George Ritchie. They're such great people, just besides being great musicians, just so welcoming and thoroughly knowledgeable in their expertise, and I was just drawn to that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I cannot. I can say only positive things about George and Quentin, because they are so different, right? Their personalities are different,
Yes.
but they complement each other so well. They are just like a perfect team duo, right? Like a tandem.
Yeah.
They work. They led that organ department. I mean, fantastically, with with uh, with different types of personalities, but similar kind of approach to stylistical interpretations, right? They were both Bach scholars, right? And
Yes.
Quentin also had or has an expertise in church music, in hymnology, right, and other things
Yes.
related to church.
Yep.
But George Ritchie also has a great experience in jazz, right? He loves
Yeah,
jazz.
he would often talk about jazz when working on Bach piece.
Right. So you would find Bach and jazz related, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember which piece you were playing when he was talking about jazz and Bach?
Um, well, my second DMA recital, I played the fourth trio sonata and the wedge, the E minor prelude and fugue, and he
Uh-huh.
would talk about Bach, like he would equate, the walking bass of jazz. He would equate it to bass, pedal notes, in
Mhm.
the feet
Right.
as a walking bass, and also the flow of music. Like jazz musicians have to pay attention to the flow of music between I don't know, I forgot exactly, but between the bass and then the piano and other instruments. And he would talk about in Bach you have to pay attention to the flow of music. Like every note fits into that flow.
Right. And jazz, right? Jazz organist. Have you observed how jazz organists played with their feet? They only used their left foot for the most of the time, right?
Right, yeah.
Interesting, right? Because the right foot was reserved for some gadgets, right? Pistons and toe pedals, right? Buttons. Changing a swell pedal, right, too. But they were very, very virtuosic with their left foot, I guess. Did you play Bach only with your left foot?
No.
Good.
No. Only toes. I cheat sometimes with heel, but very, very, very rarely. It's mostly toes, yeah.
Right. So George, of course, is a great advocate on historical approach of playing early music, and maybe, let's say, not historical, but historically informed way. I mean, you know the techniques, and then you can make informed decisions whether or not to use that on modern instrument, right? Right.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. He would probably recommend avoiding heels in early music. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Have you played, by the way, some historical instruments in France? And can you say that heel playing in early music is not even so efficient?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've played. I've played forgot the year, but the 18th century Silbermann and Marmoutier.
Right.
17, 14, 20 something. I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm not good with dates. But anyways, that organ in Marmoutier, I've played it, and the pedal notes are short, as was typical of older organs. So actually, even if you wanted to, it's not very practical to play with heels.
Right, right.
And so you basically have to play with toes and sitting a bit higher, actually, than you would for romantic music.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons for avoiding heels. And the second, I think, was because many organists practice on pedal clavichords back then. And on the clavichord, remember they had this clavichord at UNL? They did.
Yes.
You couldn't even produce the sound, quality sound on the pedals with heel, because it's such a different approach, right? Did you like that pedal clavichord, by the way?
Yeah, I would practice on there. It just made you pay attention to. You have to be very meticulous. I mean, precise with your touch.
and hands also, right? If you just play without any weight, right, there is no sound, right? You have to use your entire arm and shoulder muscles probably to get some sound. It's you have to be very relaxed, right? Right. And that transfers to the organ technique very well. Fantastic, Alain. And what were some of the more interesting instruments you saw at UNL, of course, besides that clavichord?
Well, the cornerstone organ, the Bidient organ, it used to be at Cornerstone. It's not there anymore. I found that organ so hard to play because, coming from like in high school and even masters, we play an electro-pneumatic organ, which you can play pretty much however you want. It'll be okay. But on the Bidient, which is a historically informed organ and mechanical, you had to be so precise with your touch. It would be very sensitive, and so that really taught me a different way of approaching the organ touch-wise.
Right. Do you remember? Do you remember the winding system of that instrument? Very, very flexible. You play big chord, and you release it, and
a little bit.
right, it makes some sound effects, undesirable sound effects. So, how did you deal with that issue of winding on cornerstone organ?
Well, I think maybe just maybe roll the organ a little, roll the chord a little bit, so it's not all at once. Not to demand too much wind out of the organ.
What happens probably is that this organ has very low wind pressure, right? Very low, and if you play a big chord, maybe 8 notes on the hands and a couple of on your feet, right, with double pedals, 10 voices, sometimes it happens, right? Like in Reger music, right? Reger, Max Reger, right? What happens?
I wouldn't try on that organ, but yeah.
But if you did, you play that, and suddenly all the air out of the bellows is needed, right? From the bellows to go into the pipes. 10 pipes are sounding right away. But if you are playing with full organ stops, there are maybe 15 stops or more, maybe 20. So multiply that times 20, right? And you will see that a grand amount of wind is needed just for that chord. And when you release that chord suddenly, right, without rolling, the bellows make that squeaky hiccup, right? And as you say, if you release the chord one by one, so sort of very, very gently rolling chord from bottom up, maybe, I guess. Probably, but if there are different approaches, then the pipes are more gently, basically, wind is more gently transferred to the pipes, back to the bellows, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting approach, but that happens on historical organs. If you go to Europe and play some organs in the Netherlands, for example, yeah.
I've never been there. I'd love to one day, but yeah.
Hey, Alain, can you tell us a little bit what was frustrating to you at UNL? Did you have some challenges there?
Challenges?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. I mean, just working on pieces. That was the challenges. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. And I never had problems, school-wise or courses-wise. So I never had like crazy challenges. Just the usual, just the daily grind of practicing on pieces.
Right. But you had this experience, and you knew how to practice efficiently already by that time, probably. So that was not too difficult, right? You just had to commit to new pieces and do it. Just do it. Sit down and do it.
That's right. That's the biggest part. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is just sit down and be patient. You have to be patient with yourself and just do it.
But when you have Quentin and George on your side to motivate you, I guess it's easy, relatively easy, right?
Yeah.
Another students around you in that our small circle of friends, right? Remember on Mondays we had organ studios, and what we did afterwards.
Yeah, we went out to eat and have some beer and
It was a very, very friendly environment, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I didn't feel that we were too competitive at that UNL studio. Did you?
No. It was more friendliness and supportiveness. Not competitive at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're just happy to see each other do whatever we were doing, and,
right? And wish each other the best, right? The best.
That's yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because if your friend is happy, you are also happy, right? For him or her, and this makes you even more productive. You're basically a happier person. That's great. I sometimes think that over competitiveness can hurt personalities and relationship too between the people and colleagues, especially.
Yeah,
Don't you
yeah.
think?
Yeah, and actually UNL was a good fit for me in that way because I was never a very competitive kind of person,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just like to do my thing, sit down and do it the best I can, and I always compete against myself, and we all do, and I just set a challenge for myself, and okay, I really like this piece, and I want to learn it, so I just sit down and do it, and that's how I grow, is just compete with myself.
Well,
And but
that's amazing, Alan. Let's recapitulate a little bit, recap and reframe this statement, because what you said is an insight so valuable that hundreds of people around the world will have an aha moment. That you said that you compete with yourself, right? Your biggest
yeah,
opponent probably is yourself, right? You're not
yes,
competing with other students or even masters, right? To try to achieve their level, try to be the second Bach or the third number Ritchie, George Ritchie, because there is George Ritchie already, right?
there is.
What you're doing is you're competing with yourself, right? You're trying
Yes, and
to do the
with
best.
what I can do. I mean, am I pushing the hardest I can, and am I doing everything I can to achieve my goal with this particular piece? Is the question, because I can't compare myself with the Latries of the world and whoever else is who's won like 10 competitions and whatever. I'm just not them. But I can push myself to the best of my ability that I can do.
Right. Be Alain Trouche, right? Be
Yeah, yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Be the best you are. You in this ever-changing organ landscape. That's the
yeah,
most important thing, right? Because
yeah.
your uniqueness is what will make you remarkable in this work. Not how
Mm.
you copy some masters, not how you try to emulate their techniques and approaches, right? But
Yeah,
your own uniqueness, probably your originality.
yeah, and I've never really tried to copy people. I do listen and get inspiration from like nowadays there's YouTube, so you can find so many clips of organists on YouTube, and like when I was learning the pageant of Sarbi, I was listening and looking at various people and to see how and you can't really tell what fingerings they're using. So that's up to you to find the right what works for you. But you would see the posture, the sounds they would use, and like, oh, that's interesting. Well, that works for that organ, but my organ that probably won't work because it's smaller. So I need to find something that would maybe emulate. Like I was looking at Ken Cohen, and he's just a fabulous player. His pedal technique is just flawless. I'm like, wow. And that made me want to, I'm like, okay, I need to take my pedal technique to the next level. That inspired me when I saw that.
Exactly.
Like,
You treat the videos as inspiration, right? And not
inspiration.
inspiration, but not necessarily to scare you away from the practice, right? You saw the big video of pedal passage of virtuoso Ken Cowan, and you said, "Oh no, I'm not him, and I will drop organ playing altogether," right?
No, it just inspired me
It's
to
just
just sit down and buckle up and do the work. And actually, when I was with Dr. Marilyn Kaiser, she introduced me to this pedal technique book, Pedal Exercises by Nielsen. Do you know?
Right.
The Nielsen pedal technique.
Good.
And I did some back then, but not many. And recently, since I've been in Taiwan, I'm like, okay, this is it. Every day as a warm-up before I do anything else, pedal exercises. And that's what I do. And it really helps to make your ankle more flexible and just so you can get really close to the keys, for those fast passages, and don't do extra movement. That's not necessary.
And as you say at the beginning of each practice, when your body is still cold, right?
Cold.
Right.
Yes.
You
I
need
think
to warm
warming
up.
up, just like people who work out, for muscles and all that. It's a very bad idea to start cold with cold muscles.
Right.
And so I definitely think warming up is a really a good thing to do. Doing some exercises to warm up your muscles. And same thing for hands. Every day I do piano exercises. I do anything else.
Right. And in your experience, Alain, how much time does it take to warm up your hands and feet?
Warm up, I do about 20 minutes of piano exercises, sometimes 30 minutes. I do, I don't know if you know the book, it's Behringer.
Right.
Well, it's sort of like Hanon, I think. He focuses on the five-finger position into a different chromatic keys, and then progressive movement. So 3 4 5 3 4 5 3 4 5. Throughout the keys, because 3 4 5 are weak, 4 5 are weak fingers. So I've been working on those to strengthen my finger independence and just evenness of touch. So things are in fast scalar passages, things are more smooth and even. That really helps. So I spent about 20 to 30 minutes of piano exercises, and then pedal. Oh gosh, I do one exercise a day from each section. So there are sections in that book. So I think, I don't know, however long that is, I never really looked. Probably 10-15 minutes, I would think, at least. Yeah.
Right. To get your body warmed up, get the blood circulation going. Good.
Yeah.
And what do you do later? Do you practice pieces afterwards?
Yes. So I tend to practice both on the piano and on the organ. Piano just because that provides extra resistance in case you're not on the mechanical organ, which I don't always have access to a mechanical organ. So then I rely on the piano. So especially like more pianistic pieces, I would do more on the piano. Like I just last fall I played Naiad of Vierne, and that's a very pianistic piece. So I did that on the piano. What was your question?
And back then at UNL, do you remember your DMA document or dissertation title? Do you remember what was interesting to you at that time to research?
Yes, I actually I was organ scholar at St. Cecilia Cathedral in Omaha.
Yeah.
When Kevin Vogt was there as the director of music, and he suggested, because I didn't know what to do, I really did not know what to do back then, and he suggested to do something about the French composer Jean-Louis Florence, who was a pupil of Messiaen. And he developed his own musical language, just like Messiaen did, and wrote a treatise. It was in French, though. And thank goodness I'm French, so I could read it. And so I decided to do Jean-Louis Florence. I got some recordings from French organist Michel Boursier, who had recorded quite a few of his pieces. Fantastic recordings, actually. And then I got hold of the treatise because I contacted actually the widow of Jean-Louis Florence, who had died back in 2004. Was it 2004 when he died? I forgot. Anyways,
can you spell out his last name, because people will look up?
Florence. Yeah, Florence is Florentz.
Right. Good. Now people will know what you are talking about. Great. And you did write some research about that, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I decided to focus on the it's 7 movements. It's called Laudes, Laudes. And I did some research on that, and I looked at his treatise and read some things, and so I just basically did a summarization of the treatise in English, because it was just in French back then, and just said this is how he conceived of his music, and I applied his way of dealing with music to his piece Laudes, and through his lens, and then I also applied some 12-tone, just 20th century technique to it, and that was my lecture recital too, on the Laudes. Yeah, that's one of the more challenging pieces I've ever done, because the rhythm in there is just really crazy, challenging.
Do you know the Laudes by Peter Eben, Czech composer, another great...
I don't know that piece.
But the same title, 4 movements, and it is tremendously difficult, rhythmically too. Very difficult. I played that when I was a student at Lithuanian Academy of Music. So, but it also it's a religious setting, and it has some chant fragments in it, but it's very Eben-like. This his polytonal, multi-key style, where major and minor are interspersed all the time, and bitonalities everywhere. Very colorful piece by the cycle. Right.
And talking about challenge, there was a trumpetist who wanted to play the windows of Peter Eben.
Right.
The 4 colored windows. Is it Chagall?
Chagall, yeah.
Yeah. And so he asked me if I could play with him, because it's for organ and trumpet. I'm like, oh, well, I've never played Peter Eben before. I'm like, okay. Wow. To put that together was very challenging, but very satisfying too. Yeah, when it came together, it was really fulfilling.
What year was that, your performance?
Oh,
long time ago.
Yeah, that was 2006 or 2007, maybe 2007. I forgot. It was towards the end.
Still at UNL, right?
Yeah, still at UNL. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Peter Eben has written not only music for trumpet and organ, but also, landscapes of Patmos for organ and percussion.
Now, I don't know that one. Yeah.
Aušra played that back in Lithuania too, with one of the greatest percussionists in Lithuania. So it was, as you say, the same experience with trumpet and organ, the same is with organ and percussion. Very colorful, quite challenging, but well worth the effort. In the end.
Definitely worth the effort. Yeah.
Great. Unfortunately, Peter Eben is no longer with us, right?
Yeah.
He died, and but he will remain forever as a great source of inspiration and master of organ composition, and a great improviser, by the way. He usually would make improvisation tours across various countries. He would play some big cycle of his improvisation, which he later will write down, as a written down composition. I've witnessed two such performances actually of Labyrinth at Eastman School of Music. One was very interesting with the narrator, based on the text of the 16th or 17th century writings. I forgot by whom. I have to look it up, but definitely it's very creative and just like a storytelling in musical means, and he improvised that too.
Wow,
fantastic. So Alain, we talked about UNL, and what happened next? How did you end up in Far East in Taiwan?
Well, I actually after UNL, I got a job in Scranton, Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
Presbyterian Church, and I was there for about 3 years. And that's how I met Marc Labach. I don't know if you know him. He won the national AGO competition back in I want to say 84, but I'm not positive.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fantastic organist.
Right.
It's great recordings. One of them is the Teutonic. It's called Teutonic Organ Works. I forgot. Anyways, he plays the ad notes, the les ad notes, and the word on the same recording. But it's just fantastic. Anyways, I met him, and that was great because he's in Wilkes-Barre, right there near Scranton, and I got to play at his church too, which is nice. He has a really nice Berghaus organ there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I moved out here because my partner is Taiwanese,
Right.
so I met him through at UNL actually,
Mm-hmm.
and so I moved out here, and I've been involved a little bit in they have an AGO chapter here in Taipei. For the whole of Taiwan, actually. And there's a small organ scene. The organ is relatively new in Taiwan and came in through Presbyterians and mostly Presbyterians and some Catholics and other denominations, but most of the pipe organs are in Presbyterian churches.
Mm-hmm.
And the recordings, I have a few recordings on YouTube. That's from a pipe organ at a Presbyterian college. It's called Alethea, near Taipei. And I think it's a Dutch organ builder, Pels van Leuven, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to say it. It's a pretty big three-manual organ there, mechanical. And I've played a few times there. It's a really nice organ.
So it's very interesting. You see, in many European countries, organ culture is quite on the down, basically diminishing, right? Because of the church attendance in Western societies, Western civilization. But if you look into the Eastern countries like China, Japan, Korea, and I would suspect Taiwan too, I would suspect that it's the opposite because the organ is on the rise. Can you testify this? Can you say that I'm telling sort of the truth?
Yes. Well, especially I know in Korea and Japan, the organ scene is further along than Taiwan, and in China also.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I'm not sure about the rest of the Southeast Asia. And Taiwan, I think it started, oh gosh, I'm not too sure, maybe in the 70s or maybe 60s, I'm not too sure. But then in the 80s, they decided to install an organ in the National Concert Hall.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Fentrop. And it's quite nice, actually, for Bach and earlier. Yeah, you can play other things, but it's more of a Baroque kind of organ. And the Alethea, they installed their organ in 97, which is the second biggest organ in Taiwan. And now they're building a new concert hall in Kaohsiung, which is in the south of Taiwan, a big concert complex. I mean, there'll be concert hall, recital hall, opera, whatever. And they're installing a big Kleist organ from Germany. And there are quite a few other Kleists here in Taipei. They're small, though. And so that's going to be a big concert hall organ there. So, yes, there's more installations.
Mm-hmm. More interest, right, in the organ.
Yeah, people don't really know much about organ here. I mean, like audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just going to take time to introduce the organ to a culture that doesn't really have it. The most people here are Buddhists or Taoist, and they just don't have that in their culture. But I think it's on the rise. Yeah.
It's very interesting, Alain, because did you have opportunities to play concerts in Taiwan, for example? Perform
Yes.
publicly, right? Did you meet people afterwards, local audience? Did you talk with them? What was their experience with the organ? Is it different from the Western?
I'm not so sure. My my conversations are quite limited because of the language barrier
Right.
with the local people. But I think they don't know what to make of the pipe organ, and they're interested. Like, oh, they just don't know about it. It's a total blank slate. There's no baggage.
Mhm.
It's just whatever you play. It's like, oh, okay. They wouldn't know, what it's supposed to be like,
Right.
and so they just take it at face value. Like, oh yeah, that's great, or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But they're quite open
Open.
and
And
so if you
curious,
just-
right? Curious.
curious, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if you just, make them aware that the organ is there, because most of them don't go to a Christian church. It's a minority here. So you really have to do a lot of work to promote the organ, because besides the people who go to that local church that happens to have the pipe organ, they wouldn't know that it's there. So you just have to do a lot of work to promote it to the larger people at large, who don't go to that particular church or whatever.
Right.
But I think they're quite open to it, yeah.
Great. So I guess there is some future for pipe organ culture in the world in general, because although European countries are sort of sometimes even selling their instruments abroad, right, and shipping their organs to other countries where is still needed, but in that part of the world where Far East, for example, as you say, organ culture might blossom someday or one day. And that's because of you, Alain, too, because you are an organ ambassador, right, over there. You are an ambassador. So you make this happen sometimes in your own world, in your own network. You have some network of friends, local friends as well. So when they think about the organ, they think about Alain too, and when they think about Alain, they think about the organ. So it's all connected, right? And your effort will be, of course, appreciated in paradise. Right, great, fantastic. Alain, what are you working on right now? What is your future plans with the organ playing?
Right now, I'm working on an all Marcel Dupré concert, because I've never played Dupré before, ever. So I've always wanted to, and so I decided to do the Prelude Fugue B major, the Opus 7, number 1. It's a classic. And then the Cortège and Litany,
right,
another classic, and the Variations on the Noël, and then the Symphony Passion.
Oh.
So all earlier works of Dupré. Yeah. So that's going to be hopefully in the Aletheia University on that Pels van Leuven organ.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's a nice organ for that.
Have you set the date yet?
Not yet. It's not for sure yet. Sometime in May.
In May.
May, of course, is Dupré's birthday. I think it was May
3rd.
May 3rd, yeah. May 3rd, yeah. So sometime in May, yeah, I think.
Great. So that's coming up very, very fast, very soon, right?
It is. It is.
Good. So I wish you all the success and bravery to sit down and do the work, right, on the bench that you need to prepare for that challenge. And Alain, for our closing part of our conversation, can you direct our listeners to some place online where they can find out more about you and your work? That would be great.
I don't have a big online presence, but they can find a few videos of me playing recently on YouTube. Just type my name, Alain, that's my first name, Alain, then last name Trouche, Truche. And if they type it, they should be able to find, there are a few recordings. There's the pageant of Sarbi, the first movement of the Symphonie Passion, that I did recently, and Whitlock, the scherzetto from the C minor sonata, and a couple other things. Yeah.
Fantastic. I will make sure I will put that into description. Your YouTube channel, YouTube channel will go into the description of this podcast. Fantastic. Alain, I know we are short of time. You have many things to do. Great day in Taipei. And can you tell us, just for the closing part, okay, for the very, very last thing, can you say us an insight you wish you knew when you were just starting out? You were just starting out playing the organ, and something you didn't know, maybe some frustration, right? And you now know this thing. So I think beginners around the world will appreciate that.
Insight. Well, I've got more than one, but
good.
First of all, right fingering from the get-go.
Good.
Yeah, because I didn't do that when I was young, and I should have, because now that I do that, I learn a piece much quicker. Yeah, and it's more reliable, your fingering. So write it down, just follow what your teacher says to do. And also, piano exercises. Don't disregard those. Those are important. And pedal exercises. If you're at that level, if you've mastered how to play pedals, the basics, then the next step would be to exercise the pedal to make sure those ankles are flexible. And also, always practice. How to say that? Sometimes it depends on the organs. I don't know about Europe, but like in the US, a lot of organs have pistons, right? Like buttons. Right. And so if you can do those yourself, do it. But practice doing them while you learn the piece, so they become integral part of the performance. So not after you already know how to play the piece, then you learn how to push the buttons. It's a little awkward afterwards. You just make it integral part of learning. The movement of pushing buttons and all that.
Thank you so much, Alain. Did you know that you are a great teacher too?
No, I didn't.
Because you just told us an invaluable piece of information, is a few things that people will value so much, right? And try to incorporate into their practice. But it takes some fresh look into your practice, right? And a reflection, right? How you practice and what helps, what this doesn't. And you've been so generous with your insight and time. So thanks. One more. Okay, bonus.
Small segments. Don't do a whole piece through. That's just a waste. Always small, maybe 2-3 measures at a time, and repeat in a relaxed way, slow way, relaxed way, until it's become second nature. Then you can speed up mentally. Yeah, I wish I would have known that when I was young.
Amazing. 2 thumbs up. So, Alain, I wish you stay healthy this year at least, and every year, of course. And
thank you for inviting me.
Right, and it was my pleasure, because you were so inspiring and so. You're a great storyteller, by the way, and it makes your conversation, your story so much more enjoyable and comprehensible too. If you can tell experiences from your life. And you did so perfectly. And of course, I wish you all the creativity that you can muster and bravery, musical adventures this year to happen.
Thank you, and I wish you the best too.
Thank you so much. And we'll stay in touch, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And keep practicing. Keep doing the work you
will.
do. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog Secrets of Organ Playing at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice, and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Pinkevicius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.